Each revelation was a precision strike. I watched their faces change as they realized Dorothy had been far more observant than they'd ever imagined. Annette, Dorothy said, turning her attention to me through the camera, has been my true companion and support for the past 17 years, while the rest of you were busy with your own lives. She spent every day making sure I was comfortable, healthy, and never lonely. She is the only one among you who loved me unconditionally without expectation of financial reward. Tears gathered in my eyes at the warmth in Dorothy's voice when she spoke about me. Therefore, Dorothy announced with the finality of a judge delivering a verdict, I am leaving my entire estate to Annette Morrison. This includes my house, all savings and investment accounts totaling approximately $2.8 million, my jewelry collection, and any other assets I own at the time of my death. The silence that followed was profound and absolute. Vincent's mouth hung open. Patricia made a sound between a sob and a scream. Lawrence's face turned an alarming shade of purple. Furthermore, Dorothy continued, clearly enjoying the thoroughness of her revelation, I want you all to understand this decision was not made in anger or spite, but after careful consideration of how each of you has treated me throughout my life. Annette earned this inheritance through 17 years of genuine love, care, and devotion. The rest of you assumed you would receive it simply because you exist. At that moment, as if Dorothy had orchestrated every detail with supernatural precision, the house phone rang. Benjamin glanced at the caller ID, his eyebrows rising in surprise. It's Wilson and Associates. The timing was so perfect it seemed impossible, but I remembered Dorothy's obsession with punctuality and love of dramatic timing. Benjamin answered and put it on speaker. This is Theodore Wilson from Wilson and Associates. I was instructed by my client Dorothy Morrison to contact this number at exactly 2:30 p.m. today, 30 minutes after her scheduled will reading. Is the Morrison family present? We're all here, Benjamin replied, his voice carefully professional despite the surrounding chaos. Excellent. I have Dorothy Morrison's actual last will and testament in my possession, and I need to schedule an appointment to execute her final wishes properly. Lawrence found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a croak. This is fraud. This whole thing is a setup. Sir, Theodore Wilson replied calmly, I have been working with Dorothy Morrison for the past 4 months to ensure her final wishes were legally sound and properly documented. Every aspect of this process has been reviewed by multiple attorneys and notarized according to Oregon state law. Patricia's voice shook with rage and disbelief. Annette, did you know about this? Did you help her plan this whole charade? I looked at each of them calmly, feeling a peace I hadn't experienced in years. Dorothy had given me more than just financial security. She'd given me validation and justice after a lifetime of being treated as lesser than. Dorothy told me about her plans 3 weeks before she died. She wanted me to understand what was happening and why she'd made these decisions. You manipulative little witch, Lawrence spat, his composure finally cracking completely. You poisoned her mind against her own family. No, Uncle Lawrence, I replied quietly. You did that all by yourselves. Dorothy's image seemed to have one final message. I hope that someday you will all understand that love and respect cannot be bought or inherited. They must be earned through actions and genuine care. Annette earned my love and trust every single day we spent together. I am proud to leave everything to her, and I know she will use this inheritance wisely and with the same kindness she has always shown me. The video ended with Dorothy smiling directly into the camera, her expression serene and satisfied. The laptop screen went dark, leaving us all in the aftermath of her perfectly orchestrated revelation. Theodore Wilson's voice came through the speaker. I can meet with all of you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. to review the official will and begin the probate process. Miss Morrison, as the primary beneficiary, you'll need to bring identification. I'll be there, I said, amazed at how steady my voice sounded. Lawrence, Patricia, and Vincent sat in stunned silence as reality finally sank in. They had lost everything they'd assumed was rightfully theirs, and they had no one to blame but themselves. Dorothy's plan had worked flawlessly, and justice had finally been served. The consequences that followed were swift and devastating. Lawrence lost his position as a financial planner when clients learned about the situation and questioned his judgment, wondering how someone who couldn't understand his own mother's estate planning could be trusted with their investments. Patricia and her husband abandoned their plans for a larger home, their marriage straining under the weight of her years of neglecting Dorothy while expecting inheritance. Vincent's business ventures collapsed when investors discovered his entitled attitude toward family wealth. As I established the Dorothy Morrison Memorial Foundation for Elder Care using my grandmother's generous inheritance, I reflected on the elegant justice of her final gift. Not just the financial security I'd never expected, but validation that genuine love and daily acts of kindness matter more than blood relations or social expectations. Sometimes the most powerful justice is simply allowing people to face the Natural consequences of their own choices. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to remember that love is earned, not assumed, and make sure you're subscribed for more powerful stories every week. I still remember the exact words that shattered my world that Tuesday afternoon in Portland. We've already decided who gets what. You get nothing. My Uncle Lawrence's voice carried that familiar smugness I'd grown to despise, echoing through Grandma Dorothy's living room like a death sentence to my hopes. The rain drummed against the windows of the house where I'd spent 17 years learning what love actually meant. Lawrence stood there in his expensive suit, surveying Dorothy's belongings like a king dividing conquered territory. His children, my cousins Patricia and Vincent, nodded along like eager courtiers, their eyes already calculating the value of everything around them. I'm Annette Morrison, 29 years old, and I've spent most of my life being the family disappointment. While they sat there in their designer clothes and confident smiles, I felt that old familiar sting of rejection wash over me like ice water. They'd apparently spent the entire week since Dorothy's funeral carving up her life among themselves, as if I didn't exist. The house goes to Patricia since she's married and needs the space, Lawrence continued, gesturing toward his daughter who was already mentally redecorating. The casualness in his voice made my stomach clench. Vincent gets the savings account to help with his business venture, and I'll handle the jewelry and other valuables. Then his cold eyes found mine. You can take some of her books or kitchen utensils if you want. That seems more your speed. I sat quietly in Dorothy's reading chair, the same corner spot where she used to hold me when nightmares chased away my sleep after Mom died. The leather was worn soft from years of her gentle presence, and I could still catch faint traces of her lavender perfume in the fabric. But I wasn't the broken little girl they remembered. I was about to become something they'd never expected. They had absolutely no idea what was coming. Benjamin Walsh, our family lawyer for 15 years, shuffled his papers uncomfortably. Even he seemed disturbed by their presumptuous behavior, his weathered face creased with distaste. Lawrence had always been the type to steamroll over anyone who questioned his authority, but this felt different. More vicious. When can we start clearing out her things? Patricia leaned forward eagerly, her manicured fingers already reaching for Dorothy's china cabinet. I want the house ready for my family by next month. The way she talked about dismantling our grandmother's life made bile rise in my throat. This was the same woman who'd visited Dorothy maybe twice in 3 years, and only when she needed money for her kids' private school or her husband's medical practice expansion. Vincent chimed in with that entitled drawl I'd always hated. I've already talked to the bank about transferring the accounts. Should be straightforward once we have the will. His confidence was remarkable considering he hadn't bothered attending Dorothy's 80th birthday last year, claiming he was too busy with work. But I knew something they didn't know. Something that would shatter their carefully laid plans like glass hitting concrete. As Benjamin prepared to read what they thought was the official document, I reached into my purse. My fingers found the small USB drive Dorothy had pressed into my palm 3 weeks before her death, its plastic surface warm from my nervous grip. It felt insignificant, weighing barely an ounce. But I knew it contained enough power to destroy everything they assumed about their inheritance and their importance. In Dorothy's heart, growing up in this family had taught me that love came with conditions I apparently never met. Lawrence had always been Dorothy's golden child, or so everyone believed. The successful financial planner with expensive cars and a house in Portland's prestigious West Hills. Patricia followed his lead perfectly, marrying a doctor and producing 2 children who got paraded around as the family's shining achievements. Vincent inherited Lawrence's arrogance without the business skills to back it up, but that never stopped him from acting like the world owed him success. Then there was me, the daughter of Dorothy's youngest child, who died in a car accident when I was 12. I came to live with Dorothy not by choice, but necessity. My father had never been in the picture, and with Mom gone, Dorothy was all I had left. While Lawrence's family saw me as a burden to be tolerated, Dorothy welcomed me with arms that felt like coming home for the first time in my life. "You're my little sunshine," Dorothy used to whisper during those early years when grief threatened to swallow me whole. She'd sit with me for hours, helping with homework, listening to my fears about fitting in at school, promising me I belonged in her heart even if nowhere else felt safe. While Lawrence's visits were brief and focused on what Dorothy could do for him, I spent every afternoon in her kitchen, learning her secret for perfect chocolate chip cookies, listening to stories about her childhood during the Depression, helping her tend the garden that bloomed with roses and tomatoes behind the house. The irony wasn't lost on me that Lawrence, who'd built his career advising people about family wealth management, had completely misunderstood his own mother's intentions. He saw Dorothy as an aging woman who needed his guidance and protection, never recognizing she was still sharp as a blade and perfectly capable of making her own decisions about everything. Patricia would call occasionally to complain about her husband or ask for help with the grandchildren's expenses. Vincent treated Dorothy like his personal ATM, showing up whenever his latest business venture needed funding. But I'd been there through everything that actually mattered. When Dorothy was diagnosed with diabetes at 76, I learned to monitor her blood sugar and prepare meals that wouldn't spike her levels. When she fell and broke her hip 2 years later, I took leave from my engineering job to care for her during recovery, sleeping on her couch and helping her navigate physical therapy. While the others were busy with their important lives, I drove her to doctor appointments, organized her medications, and made sure she never felt alone or forgotten. Dorothy noticed the difference, though she rarely spoke about it directly. Sometimes I'd catch her watching Lawrence's interactions with this sad expression, or see her shake her head when Patricia rushed through phone calls without asking how Dorothy was feeling. She'd been taking careful notes on all of us for years. The depth of her awareness would shock them very soon. The moment that changed everything happened 6 months before Dorothy's death. I arrived for our usual Sunday dinner to find her sitting at her kitchen table with tears streaming down her cheeks. Lawrence had just left after what looked like a heated conversation, and Dorothy appeared more hurt than I'd ever seen her. "He thinks I'm losing my mind," she said quietly, dabbing her eyes with the cloth napkins she'd embroidered decades ago. "Lawrence came here today with papers from some lawyer, trying to get me to sign over power of attorney. Said it was for my own protection, that I couldn't be trusted to handle my own affairs anymore." Anger built in my chest like pressure in a steam kettle. "What did you tell him?" Dorothy straightened her shoulders with the dignity that had always defined her. "I told him my mind is perfectly clear, and if he ever tried something like that again, he'd regret it. But Annette, the way he looked at me. Like I was already dead and he was just waiting to collect his inheritance." She shook her head, silver hair catching the afternoon light. "I've worked my whole life to build something. To leave my family, but I'm starting to wonder if they see me as anything more than a bank account with a heartbeat." That conversation became Dorothy's turning point. Over the following months, I noticed changes in her behavior. She became secretive about her legal affairs, mentioning appointments with lawyers I'd never heard of. She started asking deeper questions about my dreams and plans, as if she was trying to understand what truly mattered to me beyond just surviving. The revelation came 3 weeks before her death. She called me over on a Thursday evening and led me to her bedroom, moving with purpose despite her frail appearance. From under her bed, she pulled out a shoebox containing a small video camera and several legal documents I'd never seen. "Annette, I need you to understand something very important," she began, her voice serious but completely calm. "I've been watching this family for years, and I've finally seen everyone's true character. Lawrence thinks I'm a foolish old woman who needs his protection, but I've been planning something that will teach all of them about assumptions and respect." She explained that she'd created a fake will, designed to sound plausible enough that Lawrence and his children would believe it reflected her actual intentions. But the real will was locked in a safe deposit box downtown, along with instructions for her actual attorney, Theodore Wilson. "The reading will be quite a show," Dorothy said with a mischievous gleam that reminded me why I'd always loved her so fiercely. Now, sitting in her living room as Benjamin prepared to read that carefully crafted deception, I felt the weight of Dorothy's plan settling around us like a trap about to spring. The USB drive in my purse pulsed with anticipation, counting down to the moment when everything would change forever. Benjamin cleared his throat and began reading in his formal legal voice. "I, Dorothy Elizabeth Morrison, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament." The document was masterfully crafted to sound authentic while containing enough ambiguity to make Lawrence's family confident in their predetermined arrangements. As Benjamin read through standard legal language about debts and funeral costs, I watched Lawrence's satisfaction grow like a tumor. Patricia nodded along, mentally calculating values. Vincent looked bored, checking his phone and eager to get to the financial details. None of them noticed Benjamin's curious glances in my direction, as if he sensed there was more to this situation than anyone realized. "To my son Lawrence," Benjamin continued, "I leave my personal jewelry collection and household furnishings, recognizing his responsibility as head of the family." Lawrence actually smiled, probably already planning how to liquidate Dorothy's diamond rings and gold bracelets she'd collected over 50 years of marriage. "To my granddaughter Patricia, I leave my house and property, trusting that she will make good use of the space for her growing family." Patricia practically bounced with excitement. "I knew she'd understand," she whispered to Vincent. "Grandma always said the house should stay in the family." Complete fabrication. Dorothy had never expressed any such sentiment, but Patricia had a gift for creating false memories that supported her desires. "To my grandson Vincent, I leave my savings and investment accounts, hoping he will use this foundation to build a successful future." Vincent finally looked up from his phone, showing real interest for the first time. Dorothy's accounts contained Nearly $300,000, enough to fund whatever scheme he was currently chasing. Then Benjamin reached the section Lawrence had been waiting for. Regarding my granddaughter Annette, he read, and I felt their attention shift toward me with barely concealed smugness. I recognize that she has been a devoted companion during my later years, and I hope she will find comfort in knowing our time together was meaningful. Patricia actually rolled her eyes while Vincent smirked. They saw this as confirmation I'd received nothing of value, just empty words about emotional support. However, Benjamin continued, and something in his voice made me realize he was deviating from the script. Before we conclude this reading, there is one additional item to address. He looked directly at me. Annette, do you have something you'd like to share? This was my moment. I pulled out the USB drive, holding it up so everyone could see it. The device looked insignificant in my palm, but I knew it contained the power to destroy every assumption they'd made about Dorothy's intentions. Dorothy asked me to give this to the lawyer during the will reading, I said quietly. She said it contained something important the family needed to see before any decisions were made. Lawrence's confidence faltered. What is that? Mother never mentioned any recordings to me. Benjamin took the drive and moved to Dorothy's laptop. Let's see what Dorothy wanted us to know. The screen flickered to life, and suddenly Dorothy's face appeared in vivid detail. She sat in her bedroom wearing the blue cardigan I'd given her for her birthday, looking directly into the camera with determination I'd rarely seen from her. The timestamp showed the recording was made just 2 weeks before her death, when she was supposedly too frail to handle her own affairs. Hello, my family, Dorothy began, her voice clear and strong. If you're watching this recording, it means my will has been read and you believe you understand my final wishes. I'm afraid you are mistaken. The room fell completely silent. Lawrence's face drained of color while Patricia and Vincent exchanged confused glances. Benjamin leaned forward, clearly as surprised as everyone else. I have spent the past several months watching all of you reveal your true characters, Dorothy continued from beyond the grave. And I must say I am deeply disappointed in what I've observed. Lawrence, you have treated me like an incompetent child who needs protection while constantly pressuring me to sign over control of my assets. You see me as a burden to be managed rather than a person deserving respect. Lawrence shot up from his chair. This is ridiculous. Mother was clearly confused in her final weeks. She was on medication that affected her judgment. Dorothy's voice seemed to respond directly to his objection. I know some of you will claim this recording was made during mental incompetence. Let me be very clear about my state of mind. Last week, I completed complex calculations with my financial advisor, revised my insurance policies, and had lengthy discussions with my doctor about treatment options. My mind is perfectly sharp, and my decisions are based on years of careful observation. Patricia stared at the screen in horror. Grandma, what are you saying? We've always tried to take care of you. Patricia, Dorothy's image continued as if she could hear the protest. You have visited me exactly 12 times in the past 3 years, and most of those visits were requests for financial assistance. You complained to your father that spending time with me was inconvenient, and you only showed interest in my house when you decided you wanted larger accommodations for your family. The accuracy of Dorothy's observations was devastating. I remembered several occasions when Patricia had complained about visiting, treating it like an obligation rather than an opportunity. Vincent, Dorothy continued, you have asked me for money 17 times since you turned 18, but you have never once asked how I am feeling or whether I need anything from you. You missed my birthday party because you claimed to be busy with work, but Annette told me she saw you posting pictures from a golf tournament that same weekend. Vincent's face flushed red. This is insane. She's trying to manipulate us from beyond the grave. The manipulation has been coming from all of you, Dorothy replied as if anticipating this exact response. You assumed that because I am elderly, I was also foolish. You made decisions about my property and money as if they already belonged to you, without ever asking what I actually wanted. The recording paused as Dorothy collected her thoughts. Then she looked directly into the camera with absolute certainty. The will that was just read to you is completely false. I created it specifically to test your reactions and confirm what I already suspected about your motivations. Dorothy's words hit the room like a physical blow. Lawrence stumbled backward, his face cycling through shock, confusion, and growing rage. Patricia let out a strangled gasp while Vincent grabbed Dorothy's coffee table for support. My real will is currently locked in safe deposit box number 247 at First National Bank on Southwest Morrison Street. It has been there for 3 months, along with detailed instructions from my actual attorney, Theodore Wilson. This can't be legal. Lawrence sputtered, his voice cracking. Benjamin, surely this doesn't override the official will. This could be doctored or fake. Benjamin stared at the screen with growing respect. Actually, Lawrence, if this recording can be authenticated, and if there is indeed another properly executed will, then yes, it would supersede any previous documents. Dorothy smiled on screen with quiet satisfaction I remembered from times she'd outmaneuvered Lawrence during family arguments. I know you're questioning this recording's authenticity, so I've included details only I would know. Lawrence, you have a scar on your left shoulder from falling off your bicycle at age 9, trying to impress Sally Henderson from down the street. Patricia, you still sleep with the stuffed rabbit I gave you when you were 6, though you told your husband you threw it away. Vincent, you borrowed $200 from me last Christmas, claiming it was for your mother's gift, but you actually spent it on lottery tickets.